And we are recording. Okay, this is Jane Johnson and Bill Brady on July 7th, 2021. We're doing a Facebook Live. Our topic today is why do we need to be perfected? And Jane, would you start us out here?
Yeah, welcome everyone. And as we're just waiting for people to come on, let's begin to engage heaven. This is a newish topic for many, I sense in the spirit, and one in which we need to begin to get the desire for this topic and the reason why it's important on the journey. So let's engage the seven spirits that they will give us all the wisdom, understanding, knowledge, counsel on this topic that you're just relaxing and allowing the flow through your spirit of what's today. You're not trying to engage the left brain academically and remember concepts and build up knowledge that's not going to be an encounter. You want to do this by encounter. So as you entangle the seven spirits together, they're like flames. So you can become one flame and you're activating all of them together. You're then functioning in all those qualities. We also need immense wisdom for these higher concepts. So we can actually sit on the throne of wisdom to begin to, on the journey of possessing wisdom. So we're not just always asking for wisdom, but we become wisdom. So wisdom just flows from us. And we're not making turns off the path that are leading us more and more down the ditch, but we're on the narrow path. We just love you. We love you, all of heaven. We love you, Godhead. We love you, angels. We love you, beings. Just invite you to come and bring life to this recording today. Energy, desire, hope, an ability that this is possible. I've just got revelation that the Holy Spirit will equip us for this journey. You don't need to feel discouraged that it's too far in advance. It is you are well able to do this. This is why heaven is here to help you. So this is about being in encounter, asking heaven to help you in your weakness, as opposed to trying to master it. So draw on the full supply of heaven. Drink in the full supply. At the end, you are the end, which is the drinking in the full supply. And eventually you can be the source of that supply, source of that perfected nature. So we want to just start by, oh yes, I do encourage you to take notes as well, and then just engage in it with encounter after. And we have a page called the Sevenfold Perfection. If you just search perfection and also perfected in the website, see what comes up there. We want to just highlight the difference between perfect and perfectionism.
Actually, I think it's got the 3 words. It's perfect, perfectionism, and perfection.
Yes,
Perfection
that's it.
is a realm.
Yeah.
Perfect means fully grown up, fully mature, full grown, and perfectionism is actually a curse. I know about perfectionism. I was born into it and have spent time getting free from it. Perfectionism is the desire to do everything just exactly perfectly. And perfect is, so perfected is grown up, mature, and perfection is a realm that you can encounter and be in. So for me, the first step is getting free from perfectionism. If you've got that thing in you or in your family, if it's in your family, it's in you as well. The need to do everything absolutely perfect, which some of the symptoms of this is you won't start out until you got it all figured out. And it's not right unless it's exactly perfectly, completely right. It's a wonderful thing when you're working with someone who does things very precisely, but being married to someone who is a perfectionist is not a happy thing if they're expecting you to be a perfectionist when you're not. So anyway, one of the things about perfectionism that I saw very quickly was the need to trade out of it. Just walk away from it. Change of mindset.
Can I ask you, Bill? Because I've been wrestling with, because I've lived with this concept of perfect whatever for many years now. So I've been seeking, if you might say, a perfect life. One of the stumbling blocks I found is, and knowing my authority. So I sort of have this stance that I can control everything, and so I can have a perfect day. And then I get upset when some things don't work out perfectly.
Well, first off, I don't like the word control. I would prefer to have dominion over it, or consider myself.
Yes, that's what I mean. Yeah,
you see the difference, and you just,
yeah.
We can have the change of mindset, but still be using old language unknowingly. So I prefer not to use the word control. I see that word as being negative in all aspects. Because for me, control means that you're actually exercising, well, let's use the word control, exercising control in somebody else's life when they are meant to exercise dominion. In other words, you're trespassing on their dominion.
No, I was actually referring to circumstances like, your flight's on time and the road's not busy. And
yeah, I understand. And I know from experience with you that you do not exercise control in that negative sense. So yeah, but I don't like the word. Okay, so dominion, ordering your day, let's put it that way, maybe it's a better phrase to use, in the sense that you get the perfect parking space every time. And you know how important getting a good parking space is, and how frustrating it can be if you don't get a good parking space, because that means a long walk, and it could be in bad weather. I find that happens when I'm not even thinking about it. It's something that I have set in place, and it stays in place as long as I don't undo it. I don't have to put it in place every day or every trip. So for example, I believe that the road's going to be cleared for me of dangerous drivers, especially when we're out on the motorcycle. And it always is, but I don't have to think about it every time we take the bike out. Um, and I do understand the frustration when things don't all fall in place.
So I think we have to realize we're still living in an imperfect world.
Yes.
When a lot of people are making a lot of choices.
Yeah.
And also when we're on the journey to being perfected, we don't have full dominion over everything. And therefore, I think it's actually an unrealistic expectation.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Clearing the road, though, for example, I think takes some time to organize. So if you're asking the angels to do that right now, and you're going to leave right now, and you're going to be there in 10 minutes, I don't think you've really given enough time to get the road clear. That's just my thought on that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, where do you want to go now? There's
Let's talk about just men made perfect for a moment. I really would be interested. I want to hear your definition of just men made perfect. But before we get there, there's a couple things involved. Just, that means righteous. Men, that's men and women. Made perfect. It's very interesting. Made perfect. Made is a creation word. On the first day, God created the heavens and the earth, but everything else he did, he made. So making clay out of nothing is creating. I mean, creating clay out of nothing, that's creating. And then using the clay to make something else, that's making. And it says here, just men made perfect.
So they were made perfect by dying, weren't they? Because they had then saw the perfect, the eternal realms and the full blueprint. But we're made perfect by this journey of overcoming and possessing.
Okay. Then that leaves me asking the difference between the just men that were made perfect and the great cloud of witnesses. And my thought was the great cloud of witnesses haven't been made perfect. They just get to watch. I feel like they hang over the balcony of heaven and watch when we arrive by encounter. So there's got to be a difference between great cloud of witnesses in heaven and just men made perfect in heaven. If dying is what makes them perfect, then why are they not all just men made perfect? And why are some of them just witnesses? Is the way I've looked at it.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, look, yeah, this is probably an area we shouldn't go into fully because we don't have the full revelation on.
Okay.
It's a very complex topic. But suffice to say, it does reveal that phrase. It does reveal a journey into being perfected, which is different from when we're living. We can go right now into perfection in New Jerusalem. And there's a list of characteristics of what perfection looks like in the last few chapters of Revelation. If you have a look, we've also got a page. If you just search the characteristics of perfection, you'll see things like no pain, no death, no night and day.
No sorrow.
The sky is God's glory. And your perfect body, so your resurrected body, so you can enter and that right now, and through your imagination gate, function there. What would it feel like? What emotions? What would you do if everything was perfect? You had no limitations to your body, to the environment. You could walk anywhere, you could go anywhere. You're not restricted with travel. You can even morph in your body. you can walk through walls. Everything is spiritual and physical. It's the most glorious. I've done this for years. It's the most glorious thing. You have to allow your emotion to release you into the highest ecstasy, and think out of the box. And that's perfection. But when you want to be perfect, and say you have perfect love, perfect faith, perfect works, we see it's a realm in eternity. So you step into that and you absorb the qualities of, say, perfect love, and you allow the living letters or the all of heaven to morph and change the essence of who you are into perfect love. And so it's like you expand into that realm. So it's not like a religious activity. I operate in perfect love. I operate in perfect love. I operate in perfect love. You know, like those affirmations we used to say over and over again. Yes, our speech has power. But what I see is you want to be in encounter, and allow that drawing on the heaven to expand you into that quality.
I can see that. I also see it as a journey, though, too. I think the key is what you're showing us here, Jane, is that you go to the end of the journey and you see yourself there and you experience what it's like to be there. And that actually causes you to do a journey that gets you from here to there in your actual day-to-day practice, your day-to-day life, so that your actual works, the things that you do head towards becoming perfect works, and your faith does head towards becoming perfect faith, and your love does head towards becoming perfect love. We talked about this a little bit before we began this Facebook Live here, that it's much the same as it is with righteousness. So we are righteous by faith, and yet there's a journey to the place where all of our works are also righteous. So when you first come to faith, and you have righteousness by faith, your works, very few, if any of your works, may have actually become righteous at that point. But because you are righteous by faith, your works gradually become more and more righteous. There's more and more righteousness and less of anything that's unrighteous in your works. Seeing yourself as righteous causes you to become righteous in your actions. And we could put it this way: it causes you eventually to fully possess righteousness. And it's the same thing with perfect. As far as being perfected, being mature, you see yourself as mature, and that draws you into more and more functioning in a way that is completely and fully mature.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the reason why being perfected is so important, is because we're seeing the gospel is about us not about us not having to trade. It's well possible. So it's well possible to be perfect. So this isn't just about being in the realms of eternity or being in the realm of perfection and living a spiritual life there. It's actually both. It's actually being able to not trade, because that causes decay.
Yeah.
And also it's causing you to rely on the world's methods to gain fullness instead of God's methods.
Yeah.
So it's so important that we desire to be perfect in reality. And I can say it's not an easy process.
No.
As you get to the been doing this after a while, there can be a squeezing, like the oil gets squeezed.
Yep.
To produce oil, the fruit gets squeezed.
Yeah. there is a need at some point to set your goal to be perfected, though. And I talk about it as setting my spiritual GPS. You know how you begin a journey, you set your GPS so you're always heading in that direction. If you make a left turn or right turn when you're supposed to go straight, your GPS says recalculating or recalibrating, or whatever it says, and then it gives you the route. Okay, yeah, you made a mistake, you went the wrong way, but if you come up here and make a left, you'll get back on the right track. Setting your spiritual GPS and having desire, much of this heavenly realms journey is by desire, and it's also by choice of the will. So by the choice of the will, you decide this is where I'm heading to as a goal. And by desire, you keep on doing the actions to make the corrections if you went the wrong way, to stay on the path. One of the things I think that will help, Jane, if we start to talk about what it means to be perfect, is talk about living sacrifice. When we become a living sacrifice, at that point we begin to do the will of God. And Romans chapter 12, verse 2 speaks about three levels of the will of God. The first one is the good will of God. The second one is the acceptable will of God. And then the third is the perfect will of God. Good, you can say good and righteousness are pretty close, if not to being the same thing. They are the same thing or very close to it. So not sinning, not doing wrong trading is just a beginning on the journey of doing the will of God. So if you've come to the place where you're no longer practicing sin, and I used long ago, I saw this distinction. There's practicing sinners and there's retired sinners. So you practice, that's like practicing law or practicing medicine. That's what you do all the time. So a practicing sinner is sinning all the time. Someone who has retired may give an occasional legal opinion to somebody, or may even give some medical advice, but they've retired. But that doesn't mean that they don't have an occasion, that they slip. Though there is a place that you can come to where you don't even slip. But that's just the first level, the good will of God. Acceptable will of God is beyond that. And I think the acceptable will of God, my understanding of it, it has to do with faith, functioning in faith. And then that third, perfect will of God. And I can remember now our heavenly realms journey is subjective. So what I mean by that is much of this is internal, and it's based upon where you sense you are on the journey. There are still some actual mileposts on the journey that you can, when you come to that place, everybody can agree, okay, you are here because this thing that you just did is obviously a function that can be done only in this place. But what I was getting at was I have a subjective sense of having moved from the one level to another level to another level. And I remember stepping into the perfect will of God, consciously stepping in there. Now, I'm not saying that that was the point at which I was doing the perfect will of God in all aspects. I'm saying that was the point at which I crossed over the border into the perfect will of God. So I've got 1 foot in, then I've got 2 feet in, but I got a way to go. But at least I'm in now. I've entered into it. And my sense also is that you, with all of these things with heavenly realms, you can have entered into all 3 levels of this, but not have completed any of them yet. But then the first one you complete is the good will of God. And then after a while, you complete the acceptable will of God. And now you've just got the perfect will of God that you're continuing to grow into. And as I'm speaking, I'm thinking about a little child wearing their parents' clothes, a little girl clumping around in her mother's high heels and got a hat on and something, and you can picture that, or a boy in his father's clothes. We grow up into the clothes. And you talk about that as expanding, Jane. And I have had that experience of actually expanding rather instantly, but also there's this growing process. But my point is, you enter into each of these three, one after the other, but you won't enter
Yeah.
into the perfect will of God unless you've got that as a goal. And first off, you need to know that it's something that's actually there. And I don't know that I've ever heard anybody besides myself teach on this or give testimony to it. So I had
Yeah.
entered into all three, and then dropping off one at a time until finally you come to the place where you only got the perfect will of God that you're still growing up into, and then finally you'll come to a place where you've grown up into that too.
And I think what the test I find is often the perfect will is a shock. It's not what you thought it was. And then there's a decision of the will. Are you going to let go of the old and take the new?
Yeah.
And then there's a wrestling,
Yep.
and you don't want it, and you want the old, and and then eventually you sort of, your spirit gives in and it realizes it's actually the best for you.
Yep.
And then you submit to it and you rest in it, and
Yep.
then it's a joy. And I've found that over and over and over again. And often the greatest wisdom is a shock. It's not what you think would naturally be the case. And that's why, because God's will is so opposite to man's wisdom, that's usually a good test. And if everything is so obvious, like a lot of people have made the conclusion that we're just imperfection, and we're perfect now through Christ on the cross, and we can live out of the realm of perfection, and that's all there is to it. Because the natural mind says, wow, it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
But the wisdom of heaven is very, very complex, and it's in a, and your natural mind, like, wants to reject the complexity. But when you press into it, actually makes complete sense. It needs to be both. And if there's anything we've said, the biggest stumbling block we've ever seen in heavenly realms is this: is it one thing or is it both? And actually, everything is both, and it stops us then getting and separating into denominations based on doctrine of this or that. If we can see it's both, and if you only see one, accept that you might have greater revelation down the track of it being something else. It's not going to cause us to divide according to these doctrines.
Yeah.
It's so important.
That is important. When you first started on this topic, I was hearing something my wife told me a long time ago. If you're hearing the voice of God and he's telling you what you want to hear, it's probably not God. It's probably you.
Yeah. And I think we have to really test, is it our own heart or is it heaven? And what I'm doing now is actually, rather than just asking and not knowing who's answering, is go into encounter to a particular being, or Lady Wisdom, for example, or one of the Godhead, or one of the seven spirits, and have an encounter of who's answering me. And then you've got the reassurance that it's a real deep encounter and not your own heart's deceiving you.
The scripture says in Jeremiah that the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. No, as I say that, that's I don't think that that's completely true of us once we've gotten to a certain point. But there can be some stuff remaining that we're not really realizing that's there, and that can be what you're hearing. So that really what you're hearing is what you want to hear, and you're actually hearing yourself.
And I have found that in the journey, a lot of people look and want to follow people with things they want to hear, and if they say something they don't and it makes them feel uncomfortable and they trigger, they then move away. And so then they found people that's just reinforcing an already well-known belief in them that doesn't actually grow you, because it's not iron sharpening iron.
Yep.
Just living in this nice feeling, I need to feel loved today. Okay, who's going to tell me I'm loved by God? And that's not the growth to being perfect. I mean, we've either got to want and believe that the perfect will of God is the best for us.
Yep.
And the big question is, why don't we? And I've been wrestling with that as well. And there is huge elements, I think, of we is just trust. We just don't believe. And timing. The timing's too late. And we need this thing now. And it's absolutely desperate that we have this thing now. Otherwise, our life is going to be a mess. And that's actually a lie. I also wanted to bring out I'll just do an activation, Bill, in a minute. But you brought up a great point before that. When you're perfect, there's no bride. Do you want to say just a sentence on that?
Say that sentence again, Jen. I missed that.
When you're perfect, there's no bride.
Oh, yeah. I was talking, and we want to finish up pretty soon here, by the way. We're at 31 minutes. I was talking previously with Jane about this. I see God headship, and then I see Adam headship. And I see Adam headship as being the highest. So king headship, lamb headship, God headship, and then Adam headship. I don't have time to go into the explaining why I see it that way and what proof I have from scripture and so on and from encounter. But I do see Adam headship as the highest. And there's two kinds of headship. There's the husband-wife headship, which is intimacy. And then there's the father-son headship, which is being trained up to do the same works. And Adam headship does not have a husband and wife aspect to it at all. It doesn't have an intimacy aspect to it at all. It only has a father-son. So for the word Adam, just see the word man. Man equals Adam, right? So son of man is actually son of Adam. And I see a house of Adam. I see the highest level of Adam is perfect Adam. Perfect Adam. There's this place in Ephesians 4 where it says we all come to, and lists off three things. One of those three things is the perfect man. We all, until we all come to, and it's talking about the end goal of this whole journey, come to the perfect man, the perfect Adam, the perfect man. And there's no intimacy, husband-wife aspect to that headship at all. It's only a headship of a son growing up to be like a father, because what does a son grow up to be like? Like their father. So son of God grows up to be like God, right? Son of man grows up to be like man. Yeshua as man, not Adam as man in his fallen state, but Yeshua as the last Adam and the second Adam.
Yeah, I think this is highlighting why intimacy is not the most important concept, and also it's often relationship, and intimacy is often used the same as relationship. A relationship is very different from intimacy, but also you're being very intimate and in relationship when you're doing any sort of kingly act and ruling.
Yep.
Yeah. It draws on that relationship. Infused knowledge draws and needs that relationship. So let's not think that the most important thing is just staring into Yeshua's eyes. And I think also when you understand how New Earth works and the final picture of how it will be, nobody will have a husband or a wife. No one will feel any lack from that. They will not need that coupling. And because everything is moving towards being one. So that this is why there's no bride. You everything is one. And you will get that satisfaction from the corporate. And there won't be, oh, well, today I'll just go and have an intimate time with the Father on my own, it will actually be impossible, I think, because everybody will be in such union. There'll be no separation. I mean, that's a very big concept to talk about, and I might be wrong on that, but that's how I've seen it, and it's almost because you'll get it from everywhere, and everybody will be everywhere, so there won't be this separation thing. It'll just be this glorious union of all is one.
Here's what I see. When you use the word relationship, I think we tend to think of it as being intimacy, but I see it as a functional relationship. In other words, we're doing things together. And I see functional relationship as higher than intimacy relationship. I think things begin with intimacy relationship, but I think the point of the intimacy relationship, maybe that's the wrong way to say it. Maybe let's just say there's two sides of the coin. And the goal, though, the ultimate goal is to actually function exactly the same way. So, Son of God, there is the purpose is to function just like God. I mean, there's a oneness with God. It's a wonderful oneness, but it results in a functional oneness. And Son of Man is coming into that full functional oneness with Yeshua as Son of Man, which does point to this Adam headship at the top of everything, and at the highest level, perfect man. Now, you had a encounter you wanted to do, or a activation, Jane.
Yeah, well, a verse has absolutely leapt out me recently around Paul talking about my power is made perfect in weakness. And Father showed me a trend in the new wineskin that people were feeling they couldn't declare any weaknesses because that's then speaking death. And so we cover everything up. We don't ask for help. We don't even admit to ourselves we have a weakness. And this is how to do the new journey. And my spirit's been wrestling with this culture because I've actually lived this culture for a few years and it's never felt right. And then suddenly I recalled this verse and I actually stepped into an encounter. I want to do that now, where you actually focus, because Paul was so open about his weaknesses, but equally he also knew his strengths and his identity. So he wasn't living out of that weakness. He was allowing the weakness to draw on the power of heaven to change him. And he wasn't denying it. He wasn't just constantly going over religious protocol. I'm an apostle. He had this beautiful balance that I really, really admire. And I think this balance, this narrow path, that's so important to get, because what I found as well, when we do these Facebook Lives, is we deliberately don't do heaps of preparation to draw on the flow of heaven and to feel our weaknesses that we don't, we may not have this all sussed in our head to talk about so clearly. But then we feel the power of heaven in our weakness, so that it shows you that anyone can do this. This isn't, about a journey of being an ultimately highly successful person in the earthly terms. It's a journey of dependency. And then the power flows through, and this is where you get the flow of life. So just put yourself now, think of maybe your greatest weakness that you're aware of. Feel the weakness. And then feel and ask and engage all of heaven to grow that weakness into power, into strength. Yeshua needed power. We need power to become mighty God, to live and do this journey and not get knocked off. And see, that's why it's not just about intimacy. There's power journey. There's a strength journey. So you may want to feel yourself expanding into a higher quality that is able to cope with this situation without stress or fear, so that you're being morphed into a new way that your weakness won't sabotage you from the journey. So you could see that element of being perfected. That weakness no longer is a noose around your neck. You're aware of it, but you're drawing on heaven so that it becomes a strength. And then when that's a strength and that weakness isn't so vulnerable for you, you can then do the same for the next weakness. So you eventually become the full tree of life that's just immovable. The tree of life is around not being knocked off the journey. So solid, so stable. We're seeing many people finding they're not entering to their fullest destiny and being sidetracked by things of the world and their life and their family and their work demands, and even energy. The physical body pulls them away from doing this journey. And we need to master being a tree that's immovable, that nothing's going to knock us off. Nothing. No husband, wife saying, I don't like you doing this, stop. No, I'm too tired, my job, I have to put my job and my family first. All these things are not how to do the journey. There, we have to overcome those. And then we're full and free to live out of the highest destiny. I'm just seeing a correlation now between being the journey to being perfect and the highest destiny. Do you want the highest destiny? It may not be the most comfortable thing. You may have to wrestle with how much do you really want the highest destiny for your life. But think about how the world is a better place if you go for your highest destiny. You are designed to live out your highest destiny. Your relationship with the Godhead will be the best if you choose your highest destiny. So just allow what we've said today to sow seeds. You don't have to grasp it all today, but you may want to re-listen and do some encounters, put it on pause, redo these. The more that we find you encounter quickly when you hear anything, the more it gets absorbed into your spirit and you're able to move on with it. So anything you want to say before we finish, Bill?
Just that when I did the encounter that you were activating us into, I found my weaknesses becoming a rose, fully blooming rose flower. I watched it fully expand until all the petals were out and such. Very interesting experience.
Yeah, so you become the flower of life, which we've seen is a huge way to see yourself in heaven. And I've seen that when I become the flower of life, it's showing me how beautiful and wonderful I am in that aspect, and that I've made some immense progress in this journey.
Very good.
Okay, shall we finish there?
Yeah, I'm going to turn off the recording and the Facebook
Oh yeah, just
Live.
to say, we've got an intensive if you wish to join, and just look at the link on the home page. And just an honor to journey with you guys. We love you.
Yes.
Bless you.
Okay. Live Facebook Live is off. I'm turning recording off now.